I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy. And this is your home for everything Alberta Independence, broadcasting twice daily at 12 noon and 5 p.m., once on Saturday, which you're watching now, and we have interviews dispersed throughout the week. Sorry, our dog's jumping on us right now, so you can't see her. She's a little French bulldog. But.
Yes, but she jumped on me as I was saying, hi, I'm Nat. But first of all, thank you so much for joining us today. Please do subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe because it really does help us out. Again, we attempt to read all or most of your comments. If you really, really want your comment read, you can always super chat and we pause the whole show for those. We've also opened up memberships if you want to support us and inclined and kind enough to support us monthly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're doing a lot of different upgrades and things like that. We built a new studio. We're getting a piece of equipment tonight. So hopefully once that arrives, we can broadcast probably the morning show or the night show from a different location. So it has a little bit of a different look. Also, we've been discussing possibly starting to make a first of a series of documentaries about Alberta independence. We're kind of in the planning phase, and that's kind of why we've been going over the timeline so much of what's exactly happening over the next year, 2 years, or however long this thing is going to take. Mm-hmm. And I've been calling lawyers in Alberta, talking to friends, watching every video I can, whether it's Keith Wilson. The Fringe made a good video on the timeline today as well. We'll get into that today, but hopefully a lot of good things coming from the channel in the not too distant future.
Yes. But let me start saying hello to a few of you. Glenn Gunn says, as always, good early evening to you, Nat and Guy. Good evening. Thank you for being here. And also says, don't get me wrong, love what you guys do. Thank you so much. This firm supporter. I'm old and don't get it. Finger tats?
Well, I used to kick ass and take names. Now I'm just an old man with a bad back fighting for independence.
Because you were pretty young when you got those.
Yeah, I got all kinds of tattoos, like these tattoos on my hands. I used to live with the tribe in the mountains of Hawaii for about a year. Very interesting, no electricity, stuff like that. We used to spearfish in the bay, but yeah, it was pretty wild when I was younger. I did a lot of traveling, stuff like that.
And I was just dumb. I have no finger tats, though. My fingers are fine. Glenn Gunn says, I also worked at a bar.
Oh, but you did have another tat.
What?
The Fringe brought it up actually on his show. The wisdom tat?
Oh, yeah. I do. Again, I'm 10 years sober, so I do have the last bit of the Serenity Prayer tattooed on me somewhere.
And what's the Serenity Prayer say?
It's God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I have, and the wisdom to know the difference tattooed on me somewhere.
Well, and the Fringe was talking about that quote last night, and then Nat was like, oh, I got that tattooed on me.
Yeah, literally. Because I think that's the most important, I mean, it's all important, but that's the most important bit of it, the wisdom to know the difference. Glenn Gunn says, I also worked at a saloon in Calgary called Bullshooter Saloon 90s, maybe the best job I ever had.
Yeah, I always bouncing was always one of my night jobs. I worked at nightclubs, small bars. I always liked Irish bars a lot. They were fun to work at. One bar I worked at, though, it had the strangest name, which was Whiskey Dick's, and it had the worst location, but it paid really well because it was such a bad location. If you ever go down to downtown Vancouver, East Hastings, there's one alley where all the riffraff hang out, and they get all their substances on the ends of each corner. So there's about, I'd say, 20 people on the end of each corner kind of selling things. And our bar was right next to that. So I had to keep people out of the bar so they wouldn't use the bathroom and do things in the bathroom.
Delightful. Glenn Gunn says, the vote has to be this year or won't be till 2028. Can't have a referendum vote during an election year. I wonder if Danny was counting on that.
Well, yeah, we're going to go through the whole timeline, and we got a clip which initially got me questioning everything. And then I just did an extreme deep dive figuring out what do all these dates mean? Why is Keith saying one thing? Why is Jeff saying another thing? I don't think Jeff's wrong. I don't think Keith's wrong. I think big things are happening on all of these dates. Mm-hmm. And we're going to kind of explain what are the big events that are most likely to happen on those dates, and when is the second referendum, the binding referendum for actual independence, most likely to happen, so we can kind of plan around this. And again, we're trying to plan multiple documentaries leading up to that second referendum, so the timeline was very important.
But one documentary, but about that.
Oh, multiple.
Okay.
Yeah.
Apparently multiple now. Glenn Gunn says, we just came up with this today. Glenn Gunn says, Mitch said it best about yesterday, I'm guessing. Glenn Gunn says she pooped on his work like it was nothing, along with thousands of people that went out in the cold and asked one question. And I do agree with that as well.
Yeah, a lot of people are upset. We're going to get into a lot of their comments. One of our regular viewers left a comment, and I think she had the sentiment exactly on. We'll get into that when we get into Alberta Stay Free.
Sanjali, hello, says Danielle is done in November, voting in Todd Lowen to replace her.
Well, and I'll say this. I've been on both sides here. When she initially announced the question, I was like, let's give her some room. Then the next day when she did that press conference saying it was going to be years, I was saying maybe it's time to oust her. So I've been on both sides at this point. And where I am now, I see what the Fringe and some other people are trying to do going towards October 19th. Fantastic idea. They need all the support they can get as well. If we don't succeed on October 19th, none of the other things matter after that. But I also like what Mitch Sylvester is doing and kind of planning to take over the UCP. That builds not only a safety net, but a long-term strategy. If we control the UCP, we control the future of Alberta, period.
But I also think it's not either or, it's both.
Yeah, it's both.
And more as well. Because again, I don't think we should be losing momentum, but we can't let momentum be lost either. And that is something that we have to continue to cultivate.
Well, and I will also say this. Yeah, it should be both. And there should be other strategies kind of mixed in there. We have the strength of a decentralized movement. And I wasn't always a big fan of this decentralized movement. It was a matter of fact, we interviewed Kathy Flint, I believe, and she convinced me otherwise. She showed why when having a centralized leader, it actually led to the downfall of Alberta independence in the past. And
other movements.
Yeah, it really opened up my mind and it started questioning, well, what are the real advantages of having a decentralized movement? And it's that different segments can go in different directions. And I think at this point, we need both directions going at the same time now.
All directions, I would say, even though that we may have not even thought of yet.
Well, and everybody's working towards the same goal, and that is October 19th and ultimately the independence of Alberta. So,
Glengun says, we need to take something. She took the Carney pill. Also says, no one thought she was that stupid. Sanjali says, Carney paid her well to betray us, and says, yep, she stabbed her base in the back.
Well, it's very interesting what her excuse was for this question on October 19th. That being said, it does have an impact on, I think, April or May when the second referendum is proposed to maybe happen. We're going to talk about that and why I think it's going to be blocked at that point.
Glengun says, I get to be a Federalist. I get
Sorry,
that.
not April, May, February, or March.
She knew what Carney was. Yes. And Rafa, hello, Rafa. Thank you for being here. Says, hello, my phone was in my pocket and it suddenly started playing your stream.
Fantastic.
Ghosts. Thank you for being here. Hello. And I miss you. And yes, I know I'm working on the Spanish channel eventually. I'll announce things soon.
Yeah, we have two channels. We have a Spanish language channel, which Nat runs, and then we have this channel, which is our main channel. And we've actually put everything on pause for the Spanish channel because Alberta independence is critically important, not just in Alberta, but to change the paradigm between the elites and the citizens and to be that example for the rest of the world.
Yeah. Justin TP, hello, says, hi, y'all listening at work. I forgot to email you again. I'm sorry. I'll email you after this stream, I promise. Alberta and for Independence, hello, says, evening, everyone. Silverfeet says, hi. And Stephen Jensen says, welcome, everyone. Oh, and Stephen Jensen, we were listening into the Fringe yesterday, but let us know also if you can. You don't have to super chat or anything, but how the meeting with Mitch yesterday went.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. The work that you've been doing. You've been one of the crucial sources to kind of update us on what's going on behind the scenes when you speak up at these meetings, when these meetings are actually happening, and kind of what's the planning going forward. It's important that I think the general public knows kind of what each individual pocket's doing, so we know we have a game plan going forward.
Mm-hmm. And hold on. Sanjali says October 19th, she's giving us two questions, an A or B question. We want the B question answered yes. Chocolate says, hola, hola. And then Sanjali wrote the question, but we'll go over it as we go on with the show. Todd says, I was young when I got the maple leaf tattoo on my right shoulder. Lol, gonna cover it with an Alberta shield. Yes. Oh, Chocolate says East Hastings. Yikes.
Yeah, the job paid extremely well. It was a new bar. They thought
at the time, it was
they thought that area was dramatically changing because a lot of the property was getting bought out and stuff. So he thought he would buy the property early. He turned it into a nightclub, and man, it was a bit of a shit show. It went out of business within 6 months, but it did pay well while I was there. But it was interesting because the corner right next to the bars where everybody went to go get their product. And therefore the government van would come out there once in a while and everybody would run to this thing. And I was like, what the hell is the van? So after everybody left the van one day, I walked up to it and I go, what's this van? Why is everybody running up to you twice a night? And I guess it's a needle exchange van where they just toss them out the window to these people. And man, after that point, I was like, oh man, I really hope I don't get stabbed with a needle here.
I do not miss Vancouver. Stephen Jensen, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. Again, I think you don't have to super chat, but that's amazing how everyone is focusing on quote unquote duty to consult. Yet both judges ruled that Danny could call the referendum under the Referendum Act. Even if Citizen Referendum Act might be dead, they are lying about it. And that's kind of what we were talking about yesterday. And also what we were trying to realize and figure out a game plan, what she was actually saying during that second press conference from yesterday that we kind of caught mid conference as we started our stream. And she kept mentioning and referring about having to wait to see what the courts will say, even though, yes, apparently both judges had said, no, you don't have to.
Yeah, we'll kind of get into that. You don't have to
use that mechanism.
That's going to be the first thing we get into right after we're done the comments here. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting because she seems to be making excuses, and that's why a lot of people are upset.
Jesse GB says, Angeli, I agree. Todd Lowen would be a good replacement when the time comes. I think he supports the movement, but let's first get into the constituency associations. Stephen Jensen, thank you so much for the $5 super chat, saying Mitch pretty much said the same stuff as John Bolton interview. Found out Rebel News is going to produce information videos for us, and that's great to hear.
Well, and absolutely fantastic. I completely support both what Keith Wilson is doing, and we're going to go into his big project he's getting into. It looks absolutely fantastic, but also Mitch, I think it is a good strategy to slowly start taking over the UCP with smaller elections and whatever else they think is necessary to kind of control it, because it is the major source of political power inside of Alberta.
Don Adelaide Khalil says, hi, NNG and everyone. Cindy Melnick says, doesn't anyone remember when she said no WEF globalist, and now she has changed all of her opinions as far as I'm concerned?
Yeah, a lot of people are saying the same thing. And I was pretty upset after that second press conference. Man, that first day we went on, I was ready to say, oh, let's give her some room. And as we went on the air, she gave that second question and answer press conference, and that really flipped my opinion. Now I've had a little bit of time to calm down, so now I'm just looking at it more of a long-term game plan. How do we get Alberta independence on a little bit longer of a timeline than I think I was expecting?
Alberta Nana for Independence says that's something I'll be digging into. And yeah, we want to continue to talk to people as well. Jesse GP says, yes, and meeting was great last night. We're still heading towards the path. The direction is donate to the APP and join UCP to ensure constituency associations are stacked.
Absolutely. And he has a fantastic plan in that direction. And Keith Wilson has a fantastic plan on the other side as well. And because the questions are it's a non-binding question now, it's really, do you want to stick it to Ottawa and get more leverage for Alberta? And we're pulling from anywhere from 60 to 80%. Rebel News had a poll that said 80% of people want a better deal for Alberta and really want to stick it to Ottawa. So I think we should have a much easier time with this question than we would have with the original question, because we were polling around 35%, which I thought was enough to kind of eke out a victory. But I want to do more than eke out a victory. I want all of Alberta to be confident when we go into the founding of a new nation.
Real Stephen Jensen, thank you so much for the $2 super chat asking, did you watch Danny Town Hall? Sent you a link email. I was editing, so I didn't have time, but I think you might have looked into it.
Yeah, I started watching it. I didn't get a chance to watch all of it. I was watching when part of the question and answer period, she was taking some pretty straight up questions from some people, and I do appreciate that from her, although I don't think she's a friend, and we shouldn't treat her as a friend. We should treat her as somebody that we can get cooperation from at times, but we should expect to stab us in the back at some point, and we should prepare for that moment. That's why it's important what Mitch is kind of doing with the UCP.
Sanjali says, sorry, Mitch said she betrayed us and he has given her too many chances and she has stabbed him in the back every time.
Yeah, and I totally agree with him. And when I watched that interview with Mitch, I said, wow, that was really enlightening to me, and say maybe we shouldn't trust her so much and we should prepare for the moment that she is going to stab us in the back. But the Federalists right now are pushing her away too, and she is the best person right now pitching federalism or to stay in Alberta. So if they want to push her away, maybe we cooperate with her, but we understand that cooperation is going to need to Be at a little bit of a distance, and we have to understand she's not a friend. We can cooperate with people that aren't friends at times because she did put the question on the ballot. At least that's another step forward. We need to keep marching forward to that October 19th date.
Glenn Gunn says they're misleading, not lying. Typical. Mitch said this. Justin GP says, and we're in a unique position to donate to the APP before the writ is dropped, so donate today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Silverfeet.
And one more thing, we should be continuing to get those UCP memberships. It's going to be even more important now. Once we lay out the new timeline, UCP memberships are more of a long-term strategy, and we need that long-term strategy going forward.
Silverfeet says, you have footage of the government drug ban in action. I think you were...
but it was completely unmarked. It's just this white van that pulls up and these crackheads just swarm it. It's absolutely crazy. Yeah.
Well, you're also trying pretty hard not to get stabbed yourself. So
yeah,
you didn't have time to pull out your phone and go record it. Glenn Gunn says, if Rebel had it, it would be out by now. I don't know if that's a positive or a negative.
What was the question again, or the comment?
It said if Rebel had it, it would be out by now. The videos supporting.
The videos.
I'm guessing it'll take time to produce. Justin GB says, the second presser flipped my opinion as well. Of course, I'm not going to be too hard on her because I want the question to remain. She's still able to pull the question if we're too mean. LOL. That's another good point.
And I do want to talk about the second presser because she said this throughout the presser, and a lot of people never brought it up. They always brought up the good clips of Danny said, I don't want to kick the can down the road, but I think she was speaking out both sides of her mouth. So we personally went through and actually clipped, I thought was the most important segment. And the journalist that asked the question, asked it in such plain language, it's impossible to ignore her answer at that point. Why don't we get into that, and then we'll go back into comments after maybe.
Okay, fine. Reading your comments is my favorite part. Okay, let's go into a breaking news or breaking news.
Yeah, let's go into breaking news.
I'm trying to remember what segment it was on. Let's go into breaking news.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
And yep, starting with, funnily enough, we've never actually done this, but starting with...
well, 1 second here. And this is something that we actually clipped ourselves because we couldn't find anybody that
nobody had clipped it yet.
Clipped this portion. So I don't think it got out to a lot of people. We got a fairly small X account. If you're not subscribed to the X, it is a companion to the show where all the stories kind of go. But we put this on here last night. It didn't get any traction. I thought we would talk about it today because this is what changed my opinion and really started questioning what's the timeline here. I need to know what the timeline is so I can start different projects at different times to make sure Alberta independence gets over the finish line. She's saying one thing, Keith is saying another, Jeff is saying another. When I talk to a lawyer in Alberta, there's a reason they're all having these different dates. They're all important dates, and different things happen at all these different dates. So I don't think anybody's really that wrong.
Exactly. And I think that was the main thing. But none of the guy, we say, is it just us or does it sound like Daniel Smith is saying that it could take years and a very lengthy legal process before the second binding referendum question on Alberta's independence could take place? If so, this is worrying. And again, it is if so, if that's what she means. But this was not the only time she said it during this press conference. Again, this was yesterday. We actually, if you want to watch us watching it live, it's on our noon show that we watched it live. And as it went on and on, we got more and more, I don't know, worried or concerned, or at least it seemed a very different version to what she had said before.
Rick Bell, Postmedia.
Hi.
Hello. Let's go to the question, just so I'm really clear, because I'm not that great a reader.
Turn up.
In the second half of the question, so not the first part about to remain, could you sort of lead us through? Let's just imagine for a moment, fast forwarding in the time machine. Let's say that side were to prevail, the side that wants to pursue. What in real concrete terms? What would that look like? In other words, what would you have to do? What are those legal processes? And what kind of a time frame do you think that would be before you would be able to set up a referendum? Because a lot of them are claiming you can't have one during an election year, for instance, et cetera. So in real concrete terms, so that's complete clarity, and nobody can say there isn't complete clarity, what exactly happens if that side prevails?
Well, it is. I wish I could accelerate.
And pause it. She didn't look happy about the question because she roundaboutly kept trying to answer that question. I think so she wouldn't actually get this question in such concrete terms. I'll give it to her. She answered it for the most part. She didn't go as in depth that I would have liked, but she didn't avoid the question completely. So.
What exactly happens if that side prevails?
Well, it is. I wish I could accelerate decisions in the courts, but as you know, I cannot do that. We could perhaps request an expedited review of the King's Bench decision at the Court of Appeal, but then I would imagine it would also go to the Supreme Court. Those processes can take a couple of years, and so that would be one of the things that we'd be looking at doing, is trying to get a resolution on the court decision, and then we would have to. There's multiple other steps that would have to be taken, but I would say at the moment, what I'm interested in is getting a gauge from Albertans of, is it worth it to go through all the steps to get that in place so that there could be a future binding referendum, or are we going to work together to remain in Canada and to fix the problems that we find in Canada? So it's going to be an indication, but I don't want to understate. There's legal hurdles. There's no question, and there's going to be some delays, but I can't at the moment because I don't know the length of the court process to be able to give you the exact steps.
And if you heard there, about halfway through, she said multiple years. And she said that a couple times. And the press conference actually started out where she was saying a year or more. And then she started saying multiple years. Mm-hmm. So I think she's looking at a multiple year process to put this thing forward. We know what happened when she tried to change the CPP. It hasn't changed. Nothing's taken action on it other than delays. And that should be something very easy to pass. She's also put this question forward on October 19th, which is non-binding, saying I can't put a binding question on there because if I do, the courts will block it. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, she can put it on, but the courts may block it. The thing is, she put a non-binding question, and that's where this first date comes up of, if we're successful on October 19th of 2026, Keith Wilson is saying February, March 2027, possibly we can propose the next question or get the next question going. The problem with that is the court case will still be going. Danielle Smith runs into the exact same problem now as she will then. She's going to say they're going to challenge it within 2 weeks or a month. So she'll probably be forced to propose the question in February or March 2027. It will then be challenged and we won't have a referendum directly from that question, I believe. Even when I was watching the Fringe's video he did today, and even in the Grok AI, it said, yeah, February or March could possibly happen if there was no legal challenges, was one of the caveats. And exactly, why didn't she propose it now if it's going to get blocked anyway? My thinking is they want to have a non-binding referendum, so at least the questions answer and it rallies support. Then we move into February or March where she proposes the question, but it's then blocked. And a lot of people are hoping by the time October 2027 comes around, that's the real first date that an actual binding referendum could take place if the court case kind of clears up. That being said, that's kind of the earliest it's going to happen is October 2027 for the secondary referendum. A lot of experts are saying the most likely date for the referendum is actually October 2028. So that would be a 2.5-year timeline. On an expedient timeline, it would be a 1.5 years, October 2027. And according to Danielle Smith and a few other people, when I was asking, I said, what happens if they really try to delay this thing and just snail walk it? Could it be longer than October 2028? And the question is, yeah, the answer was yes, but most likely October 2028. If I was a betting man, that's where I would kind of put my money. I think a lot of people are hopeful for October 2027. And as far as the February, March 2027 date goes, yeah, I think she's going to be forced to propose the question at that point, but she's going to caveat that with it's going to be blocked within a couple of weeks. The exact same messaging she gave out for October 2026, which is this first referendum. So I think that's the timeline we're looking at, between 1.5 years and 2.5 years. But we need to focus in on now on October 19th, which is about 5 months away. It's going to be a lot easier for us because it's a non-binding question. A lot of people do want a better deal from Ottawa and think Alberta is getting the short end of the stick. So it should be very easy to convince people, but we should have very different talking points. We shouldn't be preaching pure independence all the time. This is going to confuse people when they go in the voting booth. They might think, oh, it's binding, I don't want to vote for independence. If we let them know this is leverage for a better deal for Alberta from Ottawa, we should be looking at anywhere from 60 to 80% of the voting base.
And at least we can get past that first hurdle. And again, I understand why it might be you might not want to make it seem that long, or that it's going to take that, it could take that long, not that it's going to, but it could take that long because it could discourage people. But I do think it's important to be clear and transparent about what the steps and what the dates are, to actually target those dates specifically, instead of saying, oh, it's going to happen faster than you think, don't worry about this, blah, blah, blah. I think it's better to be fully clear on what the steps are, what those dates are, and what is necessary to get to those each individual date as well.
Well, and again, I will say it is good to have a non-binding referendum question in October, because that rallies everybody in Alberta and says, well, we do want independence. So then you can force her in February, March to propose the actual question, which the government will then block, which will cause a big uproar within Alberta. And the first possible real date for a separation referendum will be October 2027. But once the government blocks that actual binding question, we can roll that momentum right into October 2027, hopefully, to keep people rallied, to keep people motivated, and to keep people going.
But again, I do understand that fear of discouraging people by saying or giving out the full timeline, or saying, oh, this might take up to XYZ years, kind of as Danielle said yesterday. But I think it's more useful to actually know the dates and actually know, again, what those specific steps that we're going to need to be taking are.
Yeah, and it's good not to string people along. And a lot of people are joining organizations, and we want them to know how long of a commitment this thing is going to take. It's a long-term commitment. Be prepared for the long haul here. I mean, that's what I'm completely rearranging all the strategies for the type of content we're making, documentaries, equipment we need to buy and stuff like that, traveling up to Alberta. So there's a lot of things I'm planning over the next 2.5 years, possibly, if it's an expedient timeline, over the year and a half. So I think being transparent with the general public is very important at this place. And also, so if people want to start organizations, because it is a decentralized movement, they're aware there's plenty of time to do this now.
Yes, although not that much time for the first referendum coming in October. But again, now we can pinpoint and focus on that in a certain aspect, and continue to pinpoint and focus on everything else as time moves on.
Yeah, and again,
doing both at the same time instead of having to do one thing right away, right now.
Yeah, and I just want to really hone in on the fact, a lot of people are putting out different dates. I kind of went over all the major dates people are putting out, and I think major things happen on each of those dates. I don't think anybody is saying everything's going to happen on this one date. I think they're saying focus on Jeff Rath, for instance, is saying 2028 is the most likely time for the referendum. I was surprised. I disagreed with him at first, but once I started researching, people, if they had to bet on it, would most likely bet 2028. A lot of people think 2027, though, as well. It's all dependent on that court case, I guess.
And that's the thing. But Matthew Rowley, again, we don't agree with his constitutional proposal, but sometimes says interesting things. Says, quote, Anderson provides the Premier's logic here. Whether we like it or not, this is the path. Let's win step one, not complain about it. We can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's actually click into that. It's pretty lengthy, but I kind of wanted to go over this a little bit.
Rob Anderson says, quote, regarding yesterday's speech by the Premier, one, for those Albertans wanting binding separation referendum in October due to the recent court ruling, there is no legal way to hold a binding separation referendum this fall.
And pause it there. And they're saying there's no way to hold a binding referendum question, because if she proposes it, they're going to block it within weeks. The same step is going to happen in February or March if they propose it again. The difference is we would have had a non-binding referendum at that time, and there's a lot of momentum to take us forward to October 2027.
If the simplified and binding stay-leave question had been put on the ballot, it would have been struck down within a couple of weeks, and Elections Alberta would have been legally barred from including the question on the referendum in October entirely. It may take a year or more to appeal and reverse the judge's erroneous decision, and until then, a binding referendum held by Elections Alberta is not legally or practically possible. You don't have to agree with the court's decision. I sure don't, but that's how our justice system works. And that's why you should become independent as soon as possible. Number two, for those Albertans who don't want a referendum at all, 700,000 Albertans signed a petition asking for a referendum on this issue, and Premier Smith rightfully wants to get direction from all Albertans on this matter now, not 3 years from now. It's a time for Albertans to decide whether we want to spend time, expense, and effort pursuing separation. We do. Or whether Albertans want to remain, continue to work on undoing the last 10 years of horrendous Trudeau-era policies, which would be impossible, and fight for a stronger Alberta within a united Canada, which cannot happen.
And yeah, I will say this. We do want this non-binding referendum going forward now, because this allows us to gather together, educate, and hopefully push forward, but keep momentum building as that court case is clearing itself up. It was obviously an ideological ruling. Even if it has to go to the Supreme Court, I'm fairly confident it is going to be overturned at some point.
So it continues, we will find out on October 19. You will decide, not politicians, social media clickbait farmers, or media talking heads. You. That's democracy, and it's a beautiful thing. We have it here. Again, the choice is simple. Either, number one, vote to remain in Canada, put an end to this debate, and fight to make our province and country stronger and more unified, or two, vote to commence the necessary, albeit lengthy, legal processes, appeals, and other steps needed to legally separate from Canada, including a binding referendum that complies with the Constitution. The choice is ours, Alberta. You know where the Premier stands on this question. She made herself clear and gave her reasons why she believes Alberta remaining in Canada is worth supporting and fighting for.
Well, and I want to be clear on this. This is why we can't trust Danielle Smith. It's not because she didn't put a question forward. It's because she's actually going to be stumping against Alberta independence all summer long, saying she wants to remain in Canada. The fact of the matter is, if she wanted a better deal from the federal government and she wanted the leverage, she would actually be wanting the vote on October 19th to go forward, and she wouldn't stump against it. She would stay out of it because that's going to give her the maximum leverage to get a better deal for Albertans. But instead, she's taking the opposite stance and saying, I'm going to actually stump against, or I'm going to hold rallies against Alberta independence, just like Pierre Poilievre said. Poilievre as well, if they want a better deal for Alberta and sovereignty within provinces, they should either stay out of the way or say, there's a lot of gripes here, and if the people vote for this, that's going to give me the leverage to get a better deal for Alberta.
Hold on. But what do Albertans want the next step to be? Let's all vote on October 19, get marching orders from all Albertans, and move forward with the result.
Absolutely.
But also announced yesterday, I believe, was this from Keith Wilson saying, quote, today marks the launch of the Alberta Transition Council. The ATC brings together leading experts across law, finance, energy, governance, and public policy to build a serious professional plan for how an independent Alberta would actually function. Not so against a blueprint more soon.
Yeah, and I absolutely love this idea when I first heard about it. It's funny how I first heard about it. Jeff Rath's completely against this idea, and he went on some podcasts and was complaining about it. And I was like, what is he doing? This sounds great to me. But this is exactly what we need. They're going to make white papers and other kind of research, so it puts it in fundamental terms that people know as we go forward for independence. On the secondary referendum, that we are in good hands and we actually have a plan laid out, whether it's for the CPP or anything else.
And again, Alberta Transition Council says they're introducing the Alberta Transition Council. We're doing the serious professional work behind one practical question: how an independent Alberta would actually function lawfully, responsibly, and without disruption. We think that question deserves real planning more soon.
Well, and I will say this, leave it on here for a second. This is absolutely fantastic, especially with an extended timeline of a year and a half or 2 years. He's going to really be able to get the right people on board with this, do the right research, and people are going to be really secure knowing there is a firm plan for an independent Alberta, because I think that a lot of questions are coming up. And even though the APP made some documents, this will go even a step further. And hopefully we can put it in, content creators will be able to take a lot of the research coming out of this and put it into palatable form, short form content for your non-politically engaged individuals.
Because that is one of the, or has been one of the, at least biggest hurdles that when we ask other people that we've interviewed, like, what are the biggest hurdles? What are the main questions people are asking you? They all surround kind of that what's going to happen and how is it going to look, and legally what will we do with this? What we do with the CPP? What will we do with X, Y, Z? And I think being able to answer those in a concise, short form, but knowledgeable manner will be very important to actually get and continue to move towards independence.
Yeah, and there's going to be more announcements. There was rumors it's going to be a bit of a council. I like that idea, especially if people from the business community and other communities kind of come together. It gives a certain sense of confidence to the general public that we're just not voting for independence and we don't have any direction to kind of go there. So overall, I absolutely like that. And I also like that it's being done within a decentralized framework of Alberta independence. So,
And hold on. We're going to comments now, and then we'll go into Alberta.
Well, and the reason I like, I'll just clarify a little bit. The reason I like it's being done in a decentralized framework of Alberta independence, because if somebody is put on the council or something like that, and some kind of scandal comes out of somebody here within that council or somebody over here on another project, it doesn't bring down the entire movement. We've seen what happened with the Centurion project. We were able to kind of cut that off before it became more than it should have been.
True. And Stephen Jensen says about the town hall meeting, I think she was gaslighting us and sandboxing her message without talking about the real issues.
Yeah, and I'm going to watch the full thing in depth. I only caught about, I would say about 10, 15 minutes of it before we had to go do something. But I do like the fact that she's answering questions. I don't want to see how she answers these questions and what the reaction is. There's certain questions that people aren't asking that they should be asking, but it seems like it's actual people asking actual questions. It doesn't look like they're pre-screened questions, I guess I would say. And if she does go on the fringe again, I hope he's going to ask really good questions. He already said he's going to ask good questions. The timeline is one of them. When we were talking about that February, March question being proposed, is she willing to propose that at that date? If she does propose it, is she expecting it to be blocked? Hopefully he asks both those questions, because I'd be interested in those answers. And how long does she think until the court case will be cleared up? And if it is cleared up, can we go forward right away with a binding referendum question?
Sean says, I think after seeing some videos on the topic, it looks like the polls and probably private polls weren't going the way of independence. So this was a way to let things hit rock bottom in Alberta.
Yeah, I think it's going to help us overall on that as well. And again, we were having 35% in the polls, which isn't bad. It was way above Brexit, and it maybe would have worked, but we're going to eke out a victory at that point. With this new question, we have 60 to 80% support. It gets everybody voting yes on independence on the first ballot. They're far more likely to vote yes on the second ballot because they've already voted yes once. And then with Keith Wilson's council coming out with a lot of this research, it's going to instill more confidence over the time.
Stephen Jensen says, if you want to watch Danny's town hall, it's on my YouTube, Alberta Freedom First. So there you can go watch it there if you're interested. Thank you for that.
And again, Alberta Freedom First, go subscribe if you're not subscribed as well.
Stephen Jensen, sorry. No. Yeah, Stephen Jensen, sorry. Sometimes I get Todd and Stephen confused in my mind. Silverfeet asks, what's the tattoo on Nat's right hand? Is it the Serenity tattoo, my right hand? No, actually. It's half a brain and half a heart. That kind of, wait, there we go. And then on the other side, it's, I don't know how to do this, but it's a flower. It's a flower. It's a Mexican national flower, but they mix together and they create one flower and half a heart, half a brain. The Serenity tattoo is somewhere else. Sean says, and probably that's why you have a reckless MOU that would lead to nothing but economic contraction. The political sides in Canada are likely more polarized than even in the US. Yeah, and that was the biggest stab in the back, but I think she did that for nationalists within her caucus. That MOU is absolutely horrible. It brings us one step closer to federalization. And ultimately, I think Carney, possibly Danielle Smith and David Eby are working towards the federalization of natural resources. I bring that up quite often on the show. Mm-hmm. And if we're looking at a 1.5 to a 2.5 year timeline, if they do start federalizing natural resources, people within Alberta independence are smart enough to know the federalization of natural resources takes sovereignty away from provinces, and it takes a lot of money away from provinces. It's not a good idea, but they'll pitch this to national conservatives. Oh, it's a great thing. Carney's coming towards resource development. No, he's coming towards taking your sovereignty and taking your money from your natural resources. Mm-hmm. Where were we? Stephen Jensen says, I kind of got that too. It's not a yes or no question. It's a select a box type question. Yeah. Yeah, and it's a non-binding question, so I don't mind the select the box type question. If it was a binding question, I wanted it to be much more clear. This is much more to rally support and to keep the movement going until the court case clears up and we can actually get the real question on a independence ballot. And it should be very effective in that. And it gives us time to educate and do everything that we need to do to not only get those polling numbers up, but to transition people from wanting a better deal from Alberta to saying, okay, you had your time to get a better deal. They're not handing us anything on a real substance level. Mm-hmm. It's time for us to do it for ourselves and actually vote for independence now. Justin GP says, woohoo, I'm real Steven Jensen's first sub, popped his cherry. And I wanted to show.
What's the name of the channel again?
It's Alberta Freedom First. We're going to subscribe now, actually.
I'm going to go. Oh, you're
So go
subscribing.
follow at real Steven Jensen.
And he is a great supporter of Alberta independence right from the beginning. He's a great source for us as well. So I'm really glad he has the channel up and running now. Go subscribe. We'll say it throughout the, next week as well. So hopefully we can get his subscriber base up.
And hold on. Sean says, I see this sort of line with people going to AA hitting rock bottom with alcohol, and I know it will. You have conservatives wanting Alberta and Canada to hit rock bottom under Carney to gain power.
I don't, and I'm going to say this. A lot of people say the pipeline's never going to get built. The resource project's never going to get built. These are false promises. I think differently. I think he's trying to federalize natural resources, and these things will get built. And the longer this timeline goes, we have to be prepared to educate the general public. Just because he's giving resource deals and pipelines doesn't mean it's a good thing, because if he federalizes it and brings in minorities or immigrants to work those jobs, the citizens aren't benefiting off of that. And most of the money is actually going to the federal government rather than the people of the provinces itself.
Hold on. Sled Dog says, what if Nenshi finds out if we win the first round of voting with the NDP's help that Danielle Smith will be kicked out at the AGM? That's what we both want. NDP may help us.
Yeah, I don't want to lead way to the NDP, and I also don't want to start another party. This is why I really like Mitch Fester's plan to kind of take over the UCP. And we don't need to be trying to get Danielle Smith out of power or ouster before October 19th. We need to focus on that vote. And again, come February or March, she's very likely to propose the question that's going to be blocked by the government. And we'll see where we kind of go from there.
And interesting, decenter.
And also if people, because I don't know which direction things are going to go, but if people are fully committed to getting rid of Danielle Smith, we have to find an alternative candidate that may be a compromise candidate for both the UCP and independents going forward. That independents will be confident. Their primary goal will be to get an independence referendum that's binding.
Enterprises says Danielle has her set sight on Pierre's job. And I wouldn't disagree with that.
And that's what I was saying all last week. I think she's well placed to take Pierre's job eventually. And by the time the second referendum comes, she's not even going to be in Alberta at that time.
Philip Vespa, thank you so much for being here. Says first time commenter. Thank you. Says love your show. I feel that if we follow Keith and Fringe's approach, the movement will fail. Mitch has the right idea. She needs to be removed this fall. And again, as I said, I don't think it's an either or. I think it's a everything. Let's do everything possible with the decentralized, different ways of thinking, different ways of doing things, and see how far we can get.
Well, and this is what Kathy convinced me of as well. It's not an either or. It's not a binding thing. Let Keith Wilson and the Fringe kind of do their thing with their group, and that's absolutely fantastic. And then let Mitch do his work as well over here. Both things are absolutely necessary, especially on the timeline we're on now. I like both approaches, and both approaches will work overall. And there's other people other than just Mitch and the Fringe and Keith Wilson. Mm-hmm. Other people are doing little projects like Kathy Flint, like
Chris Scott, Bruce
everybody
Party,
else. So
Nadine Wellwood. There's many other people as well.
There's a lot of things going on, and we're all working towards that same goal of October 19th. Now, Mitch's goal, I would say Mitch's goal is a little bit different because he's strategically going after the UCP and trying to capture the memberships, which I think is probably one of the more important things to actually do, especially if we're on this extended timeline. Especially if Danielle Smith may leave Alberta at some point and take Pierre Poilievre's job. We want to be prepared to make sure we have a say on who's taking over the UCP.
Mm-hmm. Glenn Gunn says, to be replaced by who? I would say Keith Wilson, but...
My idea was Keith Wilson as well, but we had a brainstorming session last week live on stream. Yeah, where
we did.
Well, everybody was kind of giving out names, and there was 5 or 6 different names that came up as compromise candidates that the UCP may go for and independents would also like. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the time we do brainstorming and game planning kind of live on stream as the different things kind of come up.
Sanjali says to Philip Vespa, I agree, but the Fringe agrees with it too.
Well, what can you repeat that?
With ousting
Oh, yeah.
Daniel Smith. Philip Espa says, boycott the referendum. Even if we lose in the fall, we can try again because it is non-binding. Danielle will use the results as a shield to stay in power at the AGM. I am warning you now.
Yeah, that's exactly what she's going to do. And she's going to say she's going to propose the question in February or March, which Keith Wilson wants her to do. And I think a lot of people are going to want her to do at that point. But again, once she proposes it, it's just going to get blocked, like what she said would happen this October if she did it. Nothing changes between this October and February or March. They're going to still block it. The only difference is we will have rallied enough support off of that first non-binding October referendum that it's going to be easier to kind of keep things rolling until the court case gets cleared up.
Which is why it may not be such a good idea to actually boycott it.
Yeah.
Because it helps, again, rally that support, but also have that show of force.
Who's saying boycott it?
Philip Espa, I just read it.
No. Do not boycott the October 19th referendum. I missed that part. No, we need
Because he says even if we lose in the fall, we can try again because it is non-binding.
No, we need to come out, and this is also the education of the non-politically engaged. So we don't want to have some kind of boycotting of the October 19th referendum. I think that's the worst thing we can do going forward. We want to use that to galvanize support to from the non-engaged.
Because that would be like literally that meme of putting a thing on your bike and then you falling down.
Well, also, if we can end up getting 70 or 80% support because the question massively favors us now, that makes a lot of people that aren't politically engaged that might not come out and vote in October saying, oh, wow, maybe I should be supporting Alberta independence. Everybody else is kind of doing it.
Yeah.
And it gets that non-politically person that might not vote in the first referendum to vote in the second one, possibly.
Smells Life every day says, I agree, boycott the referendum. Again, might not be the best idea.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of that, but everybody's in favor of their entitled to their own opinion, and it's your vote. So
True. Sanjali says, I got a different feel. He more or less said we can't do nothing until November at the AGM. So we vote on October 19th and then vote her out and vote someone in that supports independence.
yeah, and I'm not against that at all. But we should not oust her before October 19th, I believe, and the AGM slightly after that. So we can, from now until then, we should be looking for who the next candidate is going to be or who we want to put up there. And if we are going to go with that plan, Mitch Sylvester's becomes extremely important again, and his idea of buying memberships in the UCP and kind of taking control through voting.
Todd says, we're hoping with enough pressure in the UCP, the question will change by October 19th. I don't know if that would be possible because, again, she's already outlined and other lawyers have already outlined, it would probably get struck down by the courts even faster. The faster the actual question for independence gets put on the referendum.
Yeah, and I think the strategy really is to have the non-binding question and then in February and March, propose the binding question, which the government will then block, but then we can rally that support that the government blocked it and they shouldn't have, right into October, which would be the actual binding question, hopefully by the time the court case is cleared up. But then again, it could take longer for that court case to get cleared up, and that's why a lot of people are giving the date of October 2028.
Sean says, I agree with this. If you don't vote on the referendum, it's the same as voting no for independence.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
Austin Westwood, hello, says, I think if it takes that long, Danielle will be ousted for sure, and there could be an NDP government by the time, unfortunately, with the election next year. But again, I think that is why it would be important to use that time wisely and use the time to continue to rally the support and also rally against the NDP. I don't know because they have lost quite a bit of support lately, at least. They think they haven't, but they have. Even, CTV brought that up to Nenshi, and he was like, no, I haven't. And she was like, well, I have the polls right here, and all indications are you're not doing that well. So I don't know. I mean, I understand the worry there, but
well, and I would say
again,
I would say another thing as well. Danielle Smith is very popular inside of Alberta, not with me, not with a lot of people after what she did, especially with inside independence. We could oust her with the percentages we have inside the UCP, but we do have to prepare for her counter move, which may be to start another party, another conservative party inside of Alberta as well, or possibly even head up the NDP. I doubt that would happen, but she's going to have a lot of political sway, and she's going to be a major opponent going forward once we oust her, and we have to realize what's the counter move here.
Justin JP says, educate. That's how we win. And I think, again, educate for each etapa. How do you say etapa? Each stage of now the dates that we have looking forward.
Yeah, and that's what we're really looking to start making these documentaries, but also making different content where we maybe do little deep dives and put them in the video section about the CPP and other things that are well edited. They won't come out so often because it takes a lot of time to do those. But with a more long-term timeline, I think that would be very effective as well for us.
Alberta Nan for Independence says, I'd rather win in 2028 than lose in 2026 to 27, or 26 and 27.
Yeah, and we kind of laid out all the dates there, and the real dates look like 2027, 2028 is the binding referendum. We have to win this thing in October, but the question massively favors us right now. And what Keith is doing with this council and all these research and gathering the business community is going to help massively as well. I think we're in a really good position for a more long-term timeline, whether it is 2027 or 2028.
And thank you so much, Alberta Now for Independence, for the $5 super chat saying the only way NDP wins is if Conservatives split the vote.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying don't split the vote, take over the UCP, and that's what Mitch is trying to do. Nobody's suggesting starting a separate party because we've seen what happened last time.
Mm-hmm. True. And says to us in Westwood Sanjili, we will vote in another UCP that supports independence, and the NDP are so low in the polls, they won't get it. And I repeat, even Nenshi, that was brought up to Nenshi himself, and he was like, no, they're not, we're not that low. And yes, they are.
And it's going to be very interesting where both Pierre Poilievre and Danielle Smith are going to lie after the summertime. If they're coming out to campaign on the ground on a regular basis, both of them had said they're going to do everything in their power and campaign on the ground in Alberta against independence. It's going to be very interesting where their political careers kind of lie after that, because there's not only an independence movement in Alberta, it's in Saskatchewan and other places as well. A lot of people may not vote for those politicians on a federal level after that.
And thank you. Oh, hold on. Thank you so much to Stephen Jensen for the $5 super chat, saying with the MOU the oil will be uninvestable and unmarketable because it is going to raise the price by $7 to $10 per barrel. We'll pay for it with taxes.
But I mean, you watch the show all the time. My counter to that is, yeah, it's obviously uninvestable, and that's what the federal government wants. That's why they're going to be the investor, and they're going to nationalize the natural resources.
With the 30 by 30 plan and the
30 by
Sovereign
30
Wealth Fund.
Yeah.
First Nations. Alberta Now for Independence says the public really needs to see a clear vision that takes time to build, promote, and educate. And again, I do fully agree with that. And that is why it's good that now we can look at it in stages. And for this first stage, it's just get people to vote for, yes, we want a second referendum.
And exactly. We need a clear vision for each of these stages, and we need to lay it out so we're not stringing people along. People know what they're in for. And I think people are committed to this thing. And I think nobody's backing out just because it's a timeline of now maybe October 2027.
Austin Westwood says, I wouldn't put it past the First Nations to try to block the non-binding referendum.
No, they've already put out statements. They're definitely going to try. The federal government's going to do everything in their power. But if they stop a non-binding referendum with no consequence, that's going to look real crazy to the rest of the Conservatives across the nation at this point. So...
Sean says, also, if the non-binding referendum is passed, how long will Carney and the far left keep and retain power? I can think of no bigger rejection of the government in Ottawa can't be dismissed or ignored.
He's got a majority government for the next approximately 3 years, and I don't see anything taking him out at this point. I know there's a lot of people in his caucus having a hubbub right now. He's a smart enough politician. He got that majority government. He's not going to give it up for 3 years. And the problem with a 3-year timeline for Mark Carney is if he does start federalizing natural resources, a lot of fence-sitting Conservatives will say, oh, he's actually changing his stripes now. When he's not. He's taking sovereignty away from provinces, and he's taking resources away from them.
Alberta Now for Independence says, I really don't trust Jeff. But again, I think that is why, and as Kathy Flood explained, it is good that it is a decentralized movement and that each kind of group can kind of do and work towards the same goal, which is independence.
Well,
whenever it comes, independence, and as soon as we can get it, as soon as we can.
We've seen the chat. We've seen the chat today. Some people say, "Oh, they don't trust Jeff Rath, or they don't trust this individual. Yeah, but they're working in different groups. So if you like this group, work with them, and you don't like both of them, make your own group, do your own stuff kind of going forward. This is why a decentralized movement is absolutely fantastic.
Sean says, if you see how the Liberals have reacted to this and the MOU, and apoplectic that reaction has been, this isn't the law as many of the independent side, as many on the independent side see it. Nat, stop saying Zed. Sorry, Canadian / I went to a British school. So.
Well, and you're absolutely right. They're eating each other on the other side. Ninchi, Jen from the line, Jason Kenney are all talking crap against Danielle Smith. And when Polyev comes here, again, there's going to be a divide on the other side. We should highlight that divide and lean into it and ask the right questions at the right rallies, so we get the right answers on camera.
And Austin Westwood says, I asked Danielle 10 questions and all of them were dismissed. We'll continue watching that town hall meeting. Philip Vespa says, Fringe always says that Danielle will come on, but I want a definitive date and time for the interview.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully, I'm sure he's going to have good questions on his own, but I definitely hope he asks her, what's the timeline to submit the binding question? And when she submits it, if it is February or March, which we kind of expect, does she expect the government to block that because of the court case? And how long does she, if that's the case, how long will that court case take to kind of clear up at the earliest and at the latest? So when the actual binding referendum can take place.
Smile to Life Every Day says, I told Guy that Danielle is a nationalist and a monarchist a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and you were right. And now
that's why I was saying during the announcement, don't get your hopes up. It might not be what we're all expecting.
And again, the Federalists are all eating each other, and they're all pinned against Danielle Smith. And she's the smartest one of the bunch that's actually presenting the arguments, though. So having somebody like the Fringe or Keith Wilson kind of keeping her close enough and not pushing her all the way away, at least kind of keeps her in line. Now, we can't trust her, and at some point she's going to bring the knife out and stab us in the back. We need to prepare for that and keep a certain amount of distance, but we don't need to eat her alive like the other side is doing. We can get a lot of inside information and other things from her, especially because we have Mitch Sylvester working on the UCP right now. And at any time we want to get rid of Smith, we can.
Mm-hmm. Silver Feet asks, did Guy work at a bar called O'Malley's and meet Nat there since Nat has half a brain? Anyway, cool tattoo. I got these before I met him. I think that's a TV show reference. I'm not 100% sure because I don't remember fully if it's How I Met Your Mother, but I think it is a TV show reference.
And that's quite a few comments. Let's go into Alberta Stay Free, and then we'll get back to comments. The whole show is not comments, Nat.
Wish it was. Yes, let's go to Alberta Stay Free, and then I'll continue reading your comments.
Sweet home Alberta, where the roots run deep and the money trees grow.
At least I have half. You don't have one.
I was being nice about the whole thing. I was going to make a sarcastic joke.
Smile to Life Every Day. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Thank you. Both of you are great. Thank you. And so are you. And again,
if I can just take a moment and say, over the last couple of days, I was wound pretty tight because of Danielle Smith's comment about a couple of years. I was not prepared for that. And I was really trying to figure out a timeline. There was so much conflicting information. And now that there's a secure timeline, whether it's a year and a half or 2.5 years, it's there and it's something we can work towards and we can work towards concretely. And I think we actually needed more time than we would have had. I think we could have won it and we may have irked it out, but it would have been playing Russian roulette there. We could have lost as well. I think we're going to win securely now, the way things are kind of mapped out.
Hopefully. Okay, now let's get into let me go back to where we were so I don't miss my spot in the comments. And hold on.
Come on, Nat, get it together.
Oh, we didn't do this one on the breaking news, but whatever. On the Alberta Stay Free section, starting with Fergus Hodgson saying, join me for a reception and panel discussion in Calgary on May 25th, so on Monday, in the evening after the Wilson-Kenney debate. We have a handful of remaining tickets. If you work in journalism or are here in Econ Americas or observe Impunity subscriber, DM for a discount code. And again, it sounds like it's going to be very interesting because it's going to be Keith Wilson after the debate, Eva Chipiuk, and Fergus Hodgson as a moderator.
And these are heavy hitters within the Alberta independence movement. I absolutely love this panel. And I'm also going to say we need to start looking for candidates within the entire province of Alberta, especially if we're on a 2.5-year timeline. People like Fergus are absolutely phenomenal. It's not just Danielle Smith we're going to need to maybe get rid of or replace. There's a lot of other people we're going to need to be looking to put solid independence people in there.
Well, Fergus lives in Colorado, so
And he's moving back up to Alberta, though, he said on our
I don't know if he's moving or he's just going to be visiting more.
He said he was moving.
Okay. Fergus, let us know if you're moving or not. Nooni says, the vote delay is the path to kill the referendum. You got B-slapped and you submitted and said, okay, you accepted her play. Again, this is another type of opinion. She has a proven record of stringing the UCP membership along. I do not accept it. I will attend the UCP as GM and we will deal with this there. Nothing is written in stone here. It is fluid.
And I love this take. And she kind of encapsulated the take of people that are very, very angry with Danielle Smith. And again, when that second press conference happened about the question and answer, I had this feeling as well. I've kind of come off the ledge a little bit. I realize we can no longer trust Danielle Smith and we need to keep her at a distance, but we don't need to eat her alive quite yet. We need to wait to after October 19th if we make that decision. But absolutely fantastic post. And she's representing a lot of people within the independence movement these days.
And again,
and we used to profile her a lot. She's absolutely fantastic. If you don't follow her, you should do so.
Yes. And then we have this from Chris Scott saying, quote, it will never end. At least it will never end until First Nations people stand up for themselves. Corey Morgan saying enough already.
Absolutely.
Do you want me to click into this?
You can if you want. I can't remember what's there, but no. It was the letter.
Yeah, the letter from the Treaty 8 chiefs.
And we read this entire letter. I believe it was yesterday. Absolutely ridiculous. Again, they've already blocked this once from a binding referendum. It looks like what they're setting up is trying to block the non-binding referendum. Are you out of your mind? The democracy is set to die in Alberta if they're able to block a non-binding referendum. But if we go back to the original quote from Chris Scott there, and just read it one more time.
Saying it will never end, at least it will never end until First Nations people stand up for themselves.
And we do need First Nations to kind of rally. It's 46%. It's the largest demographic that want independence. We need them to raise their voice and continue to raise their voice. And we should highlight them when we can.
And they also want independence from their own system and chiefs as well. So that is another way and another point to make when talking about First Nations and independence for Alberta. Again, not just focusing on what the chiefs are doing, but what the actual members want and how they've been also in a way suffering under similar systems that they want to gain independence from.
Well, and the more we can interview members that want independence and why they want independence, this absolutely explodes the national narrative of what they're trying to build right now on a federal level and how they were able to block the case with elites within these First Nations tribes, not the members.
Bruce Party says, quote, and I'm glad that he also noticed it. Bruce Party says the Premier's media session on the referendum today, so yesterday, confirmed that Alberta will not become independent with present provincial leadership in power.
And again, this is a large sentiment now. A lot of people are starting to say uniparty, not just for Pierre, but for Danielle as well, especially not just because the type of question, but the MOU that was signed directly before. They're starting to see the federalization of Albertan natural resources and saying, this isn't a good deal. A matter of fact, you want us to pay carbon taxes on previous pipelines now. We're having to pay more taxes before a shovel even goes in the ground.
And again, as we were highlighting yesterday and even saying after we ended our own stream at 7, I think it was, or right before, it was interesting that there wasn't many commentary done by figures like Keith Wilson or Jeff Rath, and that now they have spoken up about it, but about that media availability conference that Danielle Smith did yesterday, because again, it reframed things in a very interesting way, as we highlighted at the top of the show.
Well, and again, I think we're going to play that clip one more time at the end of this section, if we can kind of get it ready, because I think it is crucially important, and it is what made me question, why is Danielle Smith talking about 2.5 years? And then when I started digging into it, okay, there's important dates all the way along the way. It could be 1.5 years, but it could also be 2.5 years. And as far as the dates go for February, March, yeah, I think we're going to have to pressure either her or whoever's in charge of the UCP to actually put the question forward at that point and force the government to block it, just so the people know that once the court case is cleared up, hopefully we can rally that momentum going forward.
Jeff Rath says, quote, attention, Alberta independence supporters, please pay attention. Make a mental list of everyone claiming that they support independence who seem grateful to Danielle Smith giving us a quote-unquote process that will push a real vote on Alberta independence into 2028. They have just identified themselves as people to distrust and avoid.
Yeah, and I thought this date of 2028 he was given was absolutely ridiculous until I started doing the research. Actually, most people that are in the know, if they were to place money on it, would say October 2028. Now, there's a big chance it's October 2027. Those are the two big dates we're kind of looking at. But I've always been a little bit hard on Jeff Rath, saying, why are you going after Corey Morgan? Why are you going after all these people? I didn't like it. And he would always go after Danielle Smith, and I always said, back off. But maybe we need somebody like that within the movement, not to go after Corey Morgan and other people, but somebody that will keep at least the screws turned on Danielle Smith. And now what Mitch Sylvester is also doing with trying to get more UCP memberships, I think works right in line with that. So again, it's a decentralized movement. I like how all the different players are working right now.
And again, because it is a decentralized movement, again, Jeff Rath can say they've identified themselves as people to distrust and avoid, but the other side can say, oh, well, Jeff Rath, X, Y, Z. I don't think the infighting is particularly useful at this point or at any point, really. But being able to have those different opinions and those different strategies, too, I think in the end does benefit everybody and independence itself.
Yeah, and it also allows the independent side to play good cop, bad cop against Danielle Smith to kind of really work her over.
Or anybody else, too.
Yeah.
Not just Danielle Smith. Do you want me to play that clip?
Yeah, let's play that clip one more time.
Okay. I'm just trying to fix the volume, fix the thing,
And we'll play it at normal speed this time if we can, because we were playing at 1.25 before.
Yeah. We say, none of the guy says, quote, is it just us? Or does it sound like Danielle Smith is saying that it could take years and a very lengthy legal process before the second binding referendum question on Alberta independence, could take place? If so, this is worrying. But thank you so much to Stephen Jensen for the $2 super chat saying, Jeff for independence, whip. LOL. Jeff for independence, whip. Okay.
And I was talking, we've interviewed quite a few people, and I was talking to people behind the scenes before, and a lot of people said Jeff Rath is very useful at certain times, and he very much is. We have a lot of different characters. We're not going to agree all the time, but people become very useful in their own right at very specific times as well.
Rick Bell, Post Media.
Hi.
Hello. Let's go to the question, just so I'm really clear, because I'm not that great a reader. In the second half of the question, so not the first part about Remain, could you sort of lead us through? Let's just imagine for a moment, fast forwarding in the time machine. Let's say that side were to prevail, the side that wants to pursue. What in real concrete terms, what would that look like? In other words, what would you have to do? What are those legal processes? And what kind of a time frame do you think that would be before you would be able to set up a referendum? Because a lot of them are claiming you can't have one during an election year, for instance, et cetera. So in real concrete terms, so that's complete clarity, and nobody can say there isn't complete clarity, what exactly happens if that side prevails?
Well, it is. I wish I could accelerate decisions in the courts, but as you know, I cannot do that. We could perhaps request an expedited review of the King's Bench decision at the Court of Appeal, but then I would imagine it would also go to the Supreme Court. Those processes can take a couple of years, and so that would...
Right there. Those processes can take a couple of years, and then she adds time on top of that even later. So she's looking at a multi-year process here, and that is the long end of the timeline. Again, there's dates all the way through. We kind of reviewed that in the beginning of the show. The first date is October 2026. Then February, March, we should propose the binding question. The government will block it. Then possibly October 2027, the court case could be cleared up by then. So that could be a triggering date for a binding referendum. But if they really drag out the court case, it looks like October 2028 would be the date.
Be one of the things that we'd be looking at doing is trying to get a resolution on the court decision, and then we would have to. There's multiple other steps that would have to be taken, but I would say at the moment what I'm interested in is getting a gauge from Albertans of is it worth it to go through all the steps to get that in place so that there could be a future binding referendum, or are we going to work together to remain in Canada and to fix the problems that we find in Canada? So it's going to be an indication, but I don't want to understate. There's legal hurdles. There's no question, and there's going to be some delays, but I can't at the moment because I don't know the length of the court process to be able to give you the exact steps.
And that was one of the most important clips to come out in recent times. That's why I've played it twice on the show. And again, nobody's really wrong here. Jeff Rath's not wrong for indicating 2028 or Keith Wilson for February, March.
27.
All these are very important dates, and they're going to play a role in Alberta independence.
Thank you so much to Stephen Jensen for the $5 super
thank you.
chat saying, wow, a journalist saying he's not a good reader. He must have gone to one of them woke schools.
Well, I love the way he asked the
I
question.
actually like that he did that.
I like the way he asked the question. I'm real dumb. I can't read real good. So just make it real simple for me. And that made her not just avoid the question. She really had to kind of dig into it. So playing his intelligence down, I think really worked there. I've seen that same strategy in debates where, can you repeat that to me? I'm just real stupid. I don't understand. And then have them repeat the fact, what you think, and then come up with your counterpoint.
True. Okay. Let me check because... Okay, now we got
Okay, we're going to go into comments now, and
Yes.
then we're going to go into Alberta personalities.
Alberta Nam for Independence says, I'd rather win in 2028 than lose in 2026, 27. I think I read that one.
Yeah, you did.
Alberta Nam says, because all the comments moved around. Alberta Nam for Independence says, to control who gets nominated, you have to get involved in your CA. Yep.
Yeah.
And Alberta Nam for Independence says, to Wild Rose Republic of Alberta, that's federal. We can control provincial politics much easier.
Absolutely. And I want to say one more thing here. And because we're looking in an extended timeline of 2027, October, possibly even 2028, there's something out of our control. And hopefully content creators will cover it a bit once it does come up. And that's the 2028 election for the United States. We need a president that's going to recognize Alberta independence and Alberta as its own independent and free country. Those possible candidates right now are J.D. Vance and possibly Marco Rubio, but J.D. Vance 100% would. We definitely don't want somebody like a Gavin Newsom getting in there, because even if we had that referendum, it would put a major monkey wrench in our path at that point.
And hold on. There we go. Sean says, I just don't see Carney fronting the money for any of this. Keep in mind, under the MOU, they have to start the carbon capture project first, which will never happen with private funding.
Yeah, we'll kind of see what happens. I think he's currently building the mechanisms, and he's going to layer other mechanisms on top of those, whether it's the 30 by 30 program or the Sovereign Wealth Fund or other things. And as they evolve, he can take away carbon taxes and other regulations he's already put on to make a pathway towards federalization.
Sean says, Daniel wants Carney's job. PP's job is merely a stepping stone to being prime minister.
Yeah, and that's what I think as well. And that's why I really thought they would try to oust Pierre Poilievre. They should have an easy time after the summertime when he campaigns against Alberta independence on the ground. What a disastrous career move for him. That being said, they probably want to try to replace him with a bootlicker like a Jason Kenney or a Doug Ford, which people will absolutely rally against, but they'll get him in there for a little while, and then Danielle Smith will have an easy time to parachute into that position.
Sean says, Trump is a lame duck, even in far left Oregon. The TDS way is losing in the last primary election. The left didn't come out nearly as big as expected. It's not as strong as it was a year ago.
Yeah, and a lot of people there's a lot of backlash against Trump. I like Trump a lot. And when I talk to people on the ground, I know people from a lot of different states in the United States. Actually, even if Trump isn't liked, the left is disliked even more. So I think he's got a good chance in the midterms. The midterms will be a good indicator what happens in 2028 with a Vance or a Rubio, and possibly having them on the same ticket.
Sean says, I think October 2027 is better. 2028 is a presidential election in the USA, and maybe want to stay away from that again.
Yeah, and that's what we're all hoping for. And I think that's the point of putting that binding question in February or March 2027 to have the government block it and then rally up a lot of animosity and bring that into October 2027. Because that would be best case scenario. We really don't want it to go to 2028 because the reasons you just outlined and a few more. That being said, if that's the only option, we need to take it, and we need to plan for it as well.
And hold on to Stephen Jensen's comment about the MOU, Alberta None for Independence said that goes in favor of independence. The fact that oil would be way more expensive, and if the MOU does start moving through, and oil becomes $7 to $10 more per barrel.
Yeah, we'll kind of have to see. I mean, Carney, Danielle Smith, they're really selling this MOU as it's a good thing. It's not a good thing in anybody that has political awareness of the situation.
Hold on. Alberta Now for Independence also says they need to get together with one message. When they're contradicting each other, it creates uncertainty. I'm guessing all the spokespeople, content creators, etc., surrounding Alberta independence.
Yeah, and I think they're having different strategies. For instance, Keith Wilson is making that council, doing a lot of research. I like that direction. A lot of the content creators are getting together behind the scenes to make sure there's more unified messaging. I think The Fringe was talking about that on his show. And then you have Mitch Sylvester over here really going, trying to attack the UCP and get memberships and make sure we control that aspect as well. I don't think they're all working against each other. I think they're just working in different aspects. There might be a little bit of conflicted messaging, but overall, I'm happy with it because there's a lot of benefits to being a decentralized movement.
Yes. Alberta Now for Independence says he uninvited her now, said she's not welcome on his show. Fringe uninviting Danielle, but then yesterday he also said she's coming back on and he's asking her questions, so I don't know.
Yeah, as far as I know that she is going to come on, I know he was a little bit upset that first day, so he uninvited her. I think that was just heat of the moment talk. I mean, it happens especially if you're on the air for hours at a time. I think overall he's looking towards October 19th, and we need somebody to ask the hard questions so we can get real answers and ask the question again if she doesn't answer it. So if she's willing to go on, I would love to see her on there so he can actually ask the questions that people want to hear.
Justin GP says, thank you. Says, Nat's cooking show will be all comments and only some cooking. Don't worry, Nat, we got you. Thank you. And I do still plan to one day, make a cooking show because I really want to. Sean says, Guy is right. It was Keith Wilson on Juno News that really flushed out the positives of this non-binding vote.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been
watching. Sean is now watching Junior News and really invested in Alberta independence because Sean was with us before when we were talking just geopolitics as well.
Yeah, and again, I've been watching a ton of interviews because I was really confused on the timeline, and then I was contacting lawyers in Alberta as well and other people that I know to kind of get a firm understanding of why all these people are giving all these different dates, and all these different dates are actually important dates. Different figures are just focused on different dates, and different dates trigger different actions from the federal government.
Alberta Now for Independence says they're terrified of their chiefs and council. It's a horrible game on the reserves. And that's why they don't speak up. Yeah. Sean says, or Danielle, you could expedite and request a stay. You're the government of Alberta. Either you have sovereignty or you don't. This is a real problem that isn't being properly addressed with First Nations power.
Yeah, she's running people in circles. We've seen it happen with the CPP when Mitch Fester really flushed out a lot of his past relationship with her that I honestly didn't know a lot of it. It's like, do not trust Danielle Smith. She will put a knife in us eventually. So we need to keep a certain amount of distance, but we also needed her to put that question on. And we also need time to take control of the UCP as well. We don't want the NDP coming to power.
Alberta Nan says, I have a theory why First Nations are given the latitude they are by governments. And Sean says to her, exactly, they support the First Nations. I said First Nations are the useful idiots doing the Liberal government's bidding and shielding itself from obvious backlash. This won't end well for First Nations, I think.
Not just the Liberal government. And we used to do a lot of geopolitics. I know a lot of people just focus on Canada, but this UNDRIP law is happening in Chile, South America, Central America, Europe. A lot of places they call them First Nations, and other places it's written into the law as Aboriginal
or Indigenous
or Indigenous as well. But it's the exact same laws being brought in by the UN. It sits there dormant, waiting for the opportunity to set the precedent. Once they set the precedent, they let it sit there, set the second precedent, and then try to expand it out from there. This is not just a phenomenon that's happening in Canada. They're using the First Nations across the world to make sure you own nothing and you will be happy.
Yep. And again, I think that is also why it is important to look sometimes outside of your country or your province or your new country, hopefully soon, to see that it's way broader than I think a lot of people even see it as.
Well, and it's going to be important. We have a lot of Americans that tune in and support Alberta independence. When it comes 2028 and time for the elections or maybe even the midterms, we need to focus on them a little bit because that's going to have a huge impact on Alberta with our new extended timeline.
Thank you so much, Stephen Jensen, for the $5 super chat,
you.
saying Alberta Radio used to be a hacker, hacked NASA and other stuff. I don't know if I can say that here on YouTube, but he's working with Mitch to work around YouTube algorithms and throttling issues. Hopefully, because we did see something funny happening with our numbers. We don't like to complain and we don't like to highlight it, but if he can help, then that would be great.
That's absolutely fantastic. Any help we can get, we need to be taking at this point.
But we have noticed shenanigans, I will say. I don't know if it's a general YouTube issue, if it's an Alberta issue, or what the issue is. But again, because we don't like to complain, we don't talk about it. Alberta Now for Independence says 100%. It's also about control of the provinces. Every acre of land held by First Nations is owned by the federal crown. All land claims are how the feds will gain control of provinces. But again, it's not just in Canada.
Yeah.
It's more widespread than that. Sean says First Nations, of course, trying to overturn common law concepts of property rights, which is insane. Hold on. And fee simple landing holding held since William the Conqueror and the Doomsday Book isn't going to gain much love.
Well, and again, it's not just property rights. They're building an entire Indigenous legal system that they're placing to supersede Canadian law, and not just Canadian law in other countries as well. It works either above or to the side and is not subject to the law of the other country. So I think there's a lot of things that we need to be very wary of when it comes to this Indigenous law and things like this.
Thank you so much. Hold on, where were we? Thank you so much to Christu, and I will go over to our UMBL and read some of your comments because there's a lot now.
Oh, okay.
Christu, thank you so much for the $5 Rumble
Thank
Rant.
you.
Says, what has been Dr. Modri up to lately? Does anybody know?
No,
we don't.
Oh, we need to. We were backed up on interviews. We're still releasing them for the next week. But after that, we're going to start reaching out again for interviews, but we're going to release them a day after we actually do the interview because we're much more honed in on how to actually do everything now. When we first started doing interviews, we weren't sure if we were going to be able to get interviews or how it actually worked with the technology and stuff.
Rusty says, Smith is going to stab us in the back. I'm glad to see people are starting to notice her pattern and track record. And Portofino says, yep, she won't last the year. And also says, I would like to see Eva Chipiuk run for leadership of the UCP.
Yeah, and she's definitely a name that was up there. Keith Wilson's another name that's up there. There was quite a few names that were proposed when we did our brainstorming session, and I liked a lot of them, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. The question is, who's that compromise candidate that guarantees we're going to push forward with an independence question, but the UCP will accept?
Rusty says, this one's a bit long. People talking about joining the UCP is like people who worry about, quote unquote, splitting the vote. We will never win if we play on their terms. Smith won her first election as the leader of the Wild Rose Independence Party. She immediately crossed the floor and threw her voter base under the bus.
Yeah, and we have a long history of kind of seeing different tactics being used. If we start another party, if we oust somebody, that already happened to Jason Kenney. What's the NDP's role? Can they have a secondary rise? So it's nice that we have a long history to kind of look back and game plan with.
And KP4U says, yeah, Pierre had to have his people tell him the coast was clear first, like always. Yeah. He waits a lot until it's convenient for him to.
Let's just talk about Pierre for a minute. He never wanted to take the gloves off until it was too late. Then he went down to America, did the great interviews he should have been doing to win the first campaign. Now he's just an eager beaver to take the gloves off when it comes to Alberta independence. We're going to see how that works out for you there, Pierre. We'll leave it at that. I'm not going to say the joke.
Smile to Life Every Day says 46% First Nations was in favor for independence in the polls. Yes. Sean says, of course, the UN Aboriginal rights are the way to, Aboriginal rights are the way of achieving the end of common law landholding rights, and I agree it will lead to a fee of years being 99-year leases on every land acquisition.
And yeah, I'm glad you were talking about that as well. I talk about it quite often. The model they're going to is a 99-year lease program. Currently, when First Nations sell a property to somebody that's not Indigenous, it's a 99-year lease. It's the same model that the CCP has over in China. When you buy a property, you only lease it for 99 years, and then it reverts back to the Chinese Communist Party. So it's funny how the Indigenous model seems to be the exact same as the Chinese model right now.
And Sean says, UNDRIP doesn't apply to white people in general. Troglodyte under governments like Canada's reading. It's not like First Nations held every little bit of land in the whole of the second biggest country on earth.
Well, and I did find out something, and that was Alberta's well positioned because all the land and all the tribes had ceded their land in Alberta, and I knew a lot of provinces didn't, but I was wondering about Quebec. Quebec, they haven't ceded their land, so that can cause lots of problems for Quebec and their independence referendum.
But they do have their Bill 99, which kind of supersedes that a bit, from what I understood, that what Nico said and from what I've been investigating.
in certain aspects, but in other aspects, no.
on paper it
so
should,
it could really throw a monkey wrench in, and you might see the real rise of a Quebec independence movement, which I'm all in favor of.
Yes. And Alberta Now for Independence, true as well, says UNDRIP isn't international law. Countries choose to apply it. I agree with you, though. It's one piece of a larger plan.
Yeah, once they adopt it, though, and then they set that precedent, it just goes like wildfire across Canada. Absolutely ridiculous. And this is ultimately what the government wants.
Sean says it's actually a common law concept, guy. Fee of years is the lesser of a fee simple right or title. Yes. Hold on, because there were a few comments I saw that just came in that I just wanted to kind of
Well, and then we're going to
answer.
go into Alberta's Canada.
Yes. David Bird, very important, also says CPC needs to name the 14 Liberal MPs who are against the Smith-Carney MOU. And they don't want to. And I think they really should.
I'm not holding my breath
No, they
on
won't,
Mark
but-
Carney's not going to lose his majority government there.
No, but it would be...
And this is why Alberta independence has such a strong narrative going forward. Pierre Poilievre can't enact change at any point. He can stand there and complain, and that's all he can do.
And Hello's 3487 says, please reach out to Jeff Rath, Keith Wilson, and Mitch Sylvester for an interview. Funnily enough, those are the three people that are hardest to reach. We have reached out to each of them. We're going to continue to try and see if they, I don't know.
Oh, well, let me say
because there's different methods each one of them has to get in contact with them.
And we did have Mitch's number, but we can't do text on our phone because we're from Mexico.
We're in Mexico.
So
yeah.
we tried calling, but it's a Mexican number, so he probably didn't want to pick up.
Yeah.
If anybody has their emails, that would be a big help.
Yes, thank you. But again, we are trying. And we'd love to interview them too. Okay, now do you want me to go to
Yeah, let's go to Alberta's Canada if we can.
not Alberta Politics?
Oh, no, Alberta Personalities, sorry.
No, Alberta Politics.
No, we already did politics.
We haven't.
Oh, we haven't. Okay.
No, we haven't even done that. Let's go to Alberta Politics.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
Starting with from Keith Wilson saying, quote, to the Vote to Stay group, Albertans face real challenges. Ottawa's policies hurt our economy, public safety, immigration balance, cost of living, and investment. What's your concrete plan to change Ottawa's course for Alberta? We need solutions, not just words. In truth, independence remains the only viable path to secure Alberta's future and achieve our potential. This is from Michael Solberg.
I'm very proud that members of my family, led by my dad, Monty, have founded a third-party advertising campaign, which we soft launched today. We're joined by other great Canadians and Albertan leaders like Jason Kenney and Travis Taves in this effort, and there are more to come. And we're excited to continue that effort to work relentlessly to stay within Canada. And by the way, we will welcome more Federalists. And those from Alberta in particular. But I do think our nation's leaders do need to weigh in on this heavily, particularly those with Alberta roots, namely the Prime Minister and Pierre Poilievre. And by the way, had a very strong statement on this today. I note that many members.
And they are moving at breakneck speed right now. They're starting massive organizations, not just this guy. Jen from the line as well is involved in multiple organizations. The fundraising has begun. The education process on their side, the door knocking has begun on their side. We need to play catch up here. So that being said, we do have the favorable question. So that's going to massively give us an advantage on that point, but we do need to start moving.
Members of his caucus in Alberta have been putting out statements today, but this is a national conversation. This has implications not just for Albertans, not just for Zane and I, but for you, David, for you, Laura, and for everyone around the country. And we welcome those voices and how Confederation can work together, how Alberta can work
And pause
within
it.
that.
Who said national conversation first?
Yeah,
I did.
we did.
Now this asshole's saying the same thing. We got to make sure we have control of that national conversation. This is why we need people pissed off and raising their voice about private property rights in British Columbia, which is adjacent to the issues in Alberta. We need Quebec to start raising their voice. They have land that's not ceded that could throw a monkey wrench in for them. So they're going to want to get their independence movement running now, as well as Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan is not happy. We should own the national conversation. The fact that this Poindexter thinks he's going to run the national conversation, he's got something else coming to him.
And again, as Keith says, they're not saying what's the plan or what's the benefit to stay within Canada. They just say we have to.
Confederation.
Okay.
And that includes voices like David Eby and everyone around this country as well. I'm very proud that members of my
Now, good luck with David Eby trying to make a case of our point for anything, really.
And this is why we've been bringing characters like Dallas Brody on the show. People are saying, why are you interviewing a politician from BC? I say,
Waitscreen, yeah.
her first principles are non-compromising, unlike a lot of conservatives within British Columbia. She brings up the adjacent issues that are important to Alberta. And now with the Federalists trying to start a national conversation about Alberta independence and trying to bring David Eby to the mix, Dallas Brody can run circles around him and keep him in check for us.
And she should. The Global Mail also says, quote, opinion. Danielle Smith tries to blame 700,000 illusory Albertans for her separatism gambit.
And again, the Federalists are trying to eat their own here, and we need to allow them to do that. So
Because again, Daniel Smith does make the best case for Alberta to stay within Canada. And the fact that Jason Kenney, Nenshi, everybody else, Jem from the line, don't seem to acknowledge that or want to acknowledge that and want to paint her as a separatist or as an independentist doesn't bode well for them, actually.
No, and the fact that, like, I understand she's going to put a knife in the back at some point and we need to keep a certain level of distance, but also just keeping our ear so we have an open dialogue with her could be very important to us as well. So it doesn't mean we're not going to oust her. We're still taking over the UCP, and I'm not calling for ousting. What I am calling for is to make sure we have all the ducks in a row in case we have to pull that parachute line.
Now I can go back to your comments. Smells Alive Every Day says there's a lot of First Nations people don't even live on the reserve. One reserve has only 33 people and yet a lot more money.
Yeah, most of them moved off the reserve to try to get a better future for themselves.
And that should tell you quite a bit. Sean says, gotta run, my friends. Love you guys. Free Alberta.
Thanks
Thank you,
for watching, Sean.
Thank you for the support from the US. Alberta Now for Independence says, have a good night. Sean and Justin GP says, independentist. I like that one. LOL. Well, here in Mexico, it was insurgentists, but we had a whole big movement and there's streets named after independence and insurgents and reform and all that. Hold on. That's where it popped into my head. Let me go. Okay. Thing is, now there's a lot of crosstalk, so I don't know which comments to read. Hold on. Troglodyte says, faint heart and never won fair country. Freedom Train says, it has to be a binary question. She's playing games. Well, I mean, not with this question, it doesn't, but.
Well, number one, I am interested to see what she says when she does go on the fringe there. I think he's going to ask the right questions. That's number one. Number two, maybe a non-binding question is important so we get some kind of result that heavily favors us with a question that heavily favors us. And then we force her to put that binding question. So when the government blocks it, the corruption is shown and the will of the people, they can no longer say, if we get a 60 or 70% vote, that we're a fringe movement anymore. It legitimizes Alberta independence in a way that we can't get otherwise, I think.
Hold on. Where were we? Here. David Bird says, did Carney offer Daniel Smith a job at Brookfield? I'm sure a job at somewhere, probably.
Maybe his job at some point.
I don't know if he'll ever let go of that one, but okay. Philip Vespa says, there is a time to be measured and calm like Keith Wilson, but now is not that time. If we continue to let the left stomp all over us, we will never get what we want. We have to be patient. We have been patient long enough.
Yeah, and we need to move. We need to act. We need to focus on October 19th. That's the action we need to take for right now. And that's step one. Without the first step, there are no other steps. I know it's a much longer timeline now, but that first step is crucially important. And it's become a lot easier for us as well.
And there was a good comment here. Freedom Train says it's impossible to be an A or B question within one question. She needs to separate the question into two binary questions or drop half of it.
It's a non-binding question anyway. It's more about getting a large vote percentage to vote in our favor so we can legitimize Alberta independence to the non-politically engaged individuals, to get them on the independence train for the secondary referendum, and to get them outraged when the government actually blocks the binding question, because that's guaranteed what they're going to do in February or March, I believe.
Freedom Train says she consulted with lawyers, all right. Luke Couture says, how delusional thinking remaining a colony and tax slave to Canada is a good idea. And that's why their arguments will continue to lose and why they don't want to make them. They just say we have to stay federalism, Canada history, even though we try to erase our own history. But
well, Poilievre keeps saying he's the prime minister in waiting, and I keep saying in response, the prime minister waiting for Canada to collapse.
Mm-hmm. Troglodyte says, slowly boiling frogs love their pot. And Dimebag Darren Coyne says, this is the worst pot ever. Yes. Tina Duguay, I guess, says, Braden said he had a contact literally in the room when Carney said Hold on. Braden said he had a contact literally in the room, and Carney and I guess Danielle said had an MOU. Smith promised no referendum this year to Carney. And again, this is all alleged. Oh, and Tina says, I meant Creighton. Okay.
Okay, let's leave it there. Let's go into Alberta Personalities if we can.
Hold on. Lucature says
It only has a couple articles in Personalities.
Dave Bjorkman is forming the Canadian Party of Canadian Constitutionalists to push for a 51st state. I wonder how much support he will actually get.
No, and we have to shut down any talk of a 51st state because I believe that's going to be Federalists trying to plant independence organizations claiming 51st state. We have to shut that down immediately. And I think across the board, we see the figures that have arisen in Alberta independence. Most of the people that have arisen so far are authentic. We need to shut down 51st state talk. Not that we don't like the United States, but they're bipolar. Every 4 or 8 years, a new president tries to undo what the previous president had done. In Alberta, we voted conservative for the last 93 years. That's a good foundation going forward.
Okay, fine. We'll go into Alberta Personalities.
But they need to understand that Albertans are done. We're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
Oh, hold on. And starting with... No.
Come
Oh,
on.
I didn't press it. No, I thought I had pressed another one of the tapes. Starting with Dennis Kalma saying, quote, I'm a native Albertan, 70 years old, and have gone from ardent Canadian nationalist to an independence seeker. Why? Because I see no path to revamp the country, clean up its constitution, balance its electoral representation, and fix the structural economic transfers embedded in the charter. I see no way for the Maritimes, Quebec, Ontario, and the West and First Nations to ever come to agreement on the kind of fundamental changes necessary to fix Canada. I see no interest from the rest of Canada to undo the horrid changes made by Pierre Trudeau and that changed the highest power in the land from Parliament to the unelected courts. See, so more in sorrow than in anger, it's time to leave. Feel free to rebut my points as you see fit. To date, there has been nothing but fear-mongering in response, never concrete plans to actually fix Canada.
And yeah, we can go on from there. I just wanted to kind of show that.
Okay.
Cool.
I thought you had something else to say. Kim Bexley says, quote, Ontario would never separate because it would shrivel up and die in a month without Alberta. Because Laura Stone had said, quote, Ontario Premier Doug Ford tells reporters in Sault Ste. Marie he would never ever put a separation question to his province, saying, I'd never do it. Premier Smith knows how I feel. She wants to, I guess, protect her 30% base.
Yeah, and that's because Doug Ford's a globalist, part of the Uniparty. He's got his head so far up Mark Carney's ass, he can't see the light. That being said, Cian Bexley is interesting because he seems to be coming around towards Alberta independence. I know he's from Alberta, but a lot of people that work for Juno News, who I like, do extremely fair reporting and report on both sides, that even though they're nationalists, such as, oh God, what's his name again?
Candace Malcolm?
Candace Malcolm, and what's the young kid's name? Harrison Faulkner. They both said they're nationalists, but they give extremely fair reporting on Alberta independence. Cian Bexley may actually be behind Alberta independence. I would love to know what his views are on it.
Isn't it Cian Bexley? Harrison Faulkner now has his own thing?
No.
I always get confused.
No, Harrison Faulkner actually still has his own thing and works for Juno News. We had cleared that up the other day because you had said the same thing. And then I went and looked.
Now we'll go back into your comments, my favorite part. Justin GP says, this pot smells like boiling frogs. Yep. And, oh, now I lost my place again. I don't like it when this happens. Lucature says, Daniel Smith sided with oppression, taxes, and control over freedom and prosperity for the upcoming generations.
Yeah. And it's up to Alberta independence to take control of the reins here by winning that October 19th ballot and then figuring out exactly what we want to do going forward after that, so we can guarantee a binding referendum question is eventually going to make a ballot.
And Darren Coyne says, how is it that water to every reserve has now been prioritized and expedited? I don't get it, because those are not the priorities of the Chiefs. Troglodyte says they don't have potable water, but the Chiefs drive Escalades because of that, I would say. Troglodyte says UNDRIP doesn't apply to Indigenous Brits. Weird. Well, yeah, because they don't count them as Indigenous. Dimeback Darren Coyne says, I'm in favor of a promise to all Indigenous of water and hunting rights, all guarantees maintained. Dimeback Darren Coyne says rights must be maintained and in some cases bolstered. for the First Nations.
Yeah, we'll have to discuss that after. I don't want to see any specialty groups or classes, whether that means we have to bring up everybody's rights to the exact same rights Indigenous have, but it causes a lot of problems when we have specialty groups and classes in a society, whether it's First Nations or whether it's LGBTQ or any other specialty group or class. We've seen how they build legislation off the back of that, whether it's compelled speech or anything else, or hate speech laws.
Property rights.
Yeah.
Tina Dugay says, you should get David Creighton and ask about his conduct in the room of the MOU. Maybe somebody with a membership can pitch this, please. Well, now I read it. Maybe. Dimeback Darren Coyne says, yes, we'll look into it. Dimeback Darren Coyne says, rights cannot be taken away. That is what makes things right.
Yeah, nobody's saying take them away. What I'm saying is everybody's rights can be brought up to the First Nations, or we can agree what everybody's rights need to be, but everybody has to be equal in the eyes of the law. Otherwise, it can be manipulated by the people in power. My voice is going out.
Wow. Mine's fine. Dimeback Darren Coyne says, God gives rights. And Troglodyte says, under our charter, it's all granted by the government, not inalienable by God. Hugely problematic.
Yeah.
And
I
Dimeback
definitely agree with
says,
that.
our charter is garbage.
Yeah, the charter is garbage,
Basically.
and everybody knows that, and that's why we need freaking independence at this point. Well, we're still swearing allegiance to the king, and nobody knows it.
Again, ramp up those No Kings protests as well. Actual No Kings protests in Alberta, because we don't want a king.
We don't want King
Actually
Charles.
don't want a king.
We're talking about King Charles.
Exactly. Troglodyte says, Remainers are masochists. Changed my mind. Can't. They are. Or they're too comfortable. They're comfortable enough where they don't see a problem yet. And by the time they see a problem, it'll be a problem. Don Nadalek says, what kind of dentist? Independentist, I said. Troglodyte says, the dentist that wears the pens.
And let's go into the last section here. It's going to be Alberta's Canada. We took a long time on today's show. I had a lot of good stories. I'll probably carry some of those stories over to Monday morning's episode.
Okay. That's my...
This will be
He's
the
looking
last...
at me like, that's your fault.
This will be the last section, Alberta's Canada. Then we'll go into any questions that are or comments that are remaining, and then call it a day.
Okay.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
And... yes. Oh, no, I closed it. I
Oh.
wasn't supposed to close it.
But, oh, no.
Oh, I can reopen it. Sorry, I can reopen it.
Oh, you can.
Yes.
Because this was a pretty important one, if it's the one I believe it is. It's the one about Quebec.
Yes, Chris Scott says, quote, Quebec doesn't have treaties either. Leighton is correct. Grey Matter Podcast says, quote, no, the problem which the CPC helped create is adoption of the UN nation destroying program called UNDRIP.
Yeah, and Quebec has to be really looking into this right now with UNDRIP setting the precedent in BC. They're going to very easily be able to bring it across all Canada once the precedents are set. So Quebec may really want to get their independence movement going right now. Mm-hmm. They're going to need some help because they don't have very good polling. But the PQ is coming into power, which is an independence party, which is fantastic. But if we raise our voice at the same time they raise their, I think it will have a net effect on the national conversation.
Mm-hmm. And, hold on, oh, this one's long. Jeff Rath says, quote, breaking news, the recent Justice Shayna Leonard in Alberta saying that government of Alberta must, quote unquote, consult with First Nations prior to the chief electoral officer approving a petition on independence means that if it isn't overturned on appeal, Alberta will become ungovernable. The chiefs are now saying that even to have a question on independence requires consultation. In effect, you can't consult with Albertans by way of petition or have an election in Alberta without first, quote unquote, consulting with chiefs of Alberta. The decision flows from the mere assertion of a, quote, treaty relationship, a lack of consultation, which, according to Justice Leonard, gives rise to irreparable harm. Governments make millions of decisions every year without consultation with First Nations. Every one of these decisions is now subject to injunctions.
Yeah, the entire federal government doesn't work if this ruling stands, it throws a monkey wrench in everything, and it really leads way to a secondary system of governance, which is First Nations governance, which isn't accountable to Canadian law, it looks like.
Mm-hmm. And again, might not just be for number one, Canada, or for these kinds of things.
Yeah.
It might probably is, I will say, a bigger, broader plan that encompasses not just Canada, and maybe even not just First Nations, I would say. But that's a mechanism they're using right now to get all these things passed and through. National Post says, Conrad Black, quote, Canada better hope Alberta doesn't leave with its wealth.
Yeah, and
That's why they're
that's
so worried.
very simple right there. And this is why Canada wants to federalize natural resources before provinces start leaving Canada, saying we want to keep our wealth for ourselves. It's going to be too late by the time people wake up for a lot of provinces. It's not too late for Alberta.
And again, right now is the time to start educating on all of these things. And again, maybe framing it, especially for the cities, as well, this will help us get a better deal from Ottawa, blah, blah, blah. But at least you get that first hurdle passed of, yes, we want to ask the second question. Yes, we want independence.
Well, and Saskatchewan has some catching up to do because they have some legal hurdles in their way that they need some of their laws changed, but they also need a premier that's on their side. Scott Moe's not helping them out in any way, shape, or form. Now that we're on a little bit of a longer timeline, I'm hoping Saskatchewan can catch up and can fix the hurdles that are kind of in their way so they can get their own independence movement really chugging along there.
And lastly, from City News Vancouver saying, quote, voting starts today for members of the BC Conservative Party to pick their new leader.
Yeah, and this is a bunch of skin suits that are all trying to have the policies of Dallas Brody, who they kicked out of their own...
Because of those same policies.
They kicked out of the Conservative kicked out of the Conservative Party a couple of years later. Now her policies are popular and they're all adopting them. Absolutely ridiculous. I'd vote for none of them. That's who I'll vote for.
Exactly.
I'll vote for Dallas Brody in BC. That's it. I lived in BC for a long time and I'm fed up with their politics and the fake conservatives that constantly come out of there.
Yes.
Okay, let's go into comments and then we're going to call it a day.
Can I just go to this last one? This was from Alberta and the World, but I like it.
Okay.
This is from the Critical Compass. Critical Compass
Oh, yeah.
says, quote, imagine being a British Columbian talking tough like this about not being welcome on land as your provincial government is currently letting natives steal your houses and businesses. Because Hudson Mack had said, a message to any Albertans planning to vote to separate from Canada. When you're making summer vacation plans, please be sure to stay the hell out of BC. You're not welcome.
And this is the thing, the politicians there and all these conservative politicians just voted right along all the way. And this is why your land's getting taken. They went along with all the land acknowledgements, the most recent conservative debates in BC. The first thing they did is land acknowledgements.
After they complained about land acknowledgements and the destruction of private property rights, but they still have to comply and do their little land acknowledgements.
The people doing
this is not my land. This is not my land.
The people doing the land acknowledgements are the one going to protect your land. That sounds absolutely ridiculous to me. No more land acknowledgements. That's the slogan.
Yes. Justin GP says, I wonder how much the water bills will be when natives have to pay. My water bill is around $150 a month, and that's just me. That's
wow. What?
Yeah. No, that I was trying to calculate quickly in my head. I was trying to remember how much we used to pay in Vancouver, but I don't remember.
I can't remember.
Sean says, been listening on the side, leaving the house now. I just wanted to say MMWG to SLGBTQQIIAA plus rights are not special rights. Then we shouldn't have to do the whole damn acronym, then should we? Sean says, happy Memorial Day, guys. Bye. Bye. Justin GP says, hey, Sean, listen to this. Zed. Because he doesn't like it when we talk like British people. Hold on, where are we?
Why don't we go to RUMBLE? We might not get to all the comments.
We still have a lot of comments.
We're not going to get to all
we're almost there.
Okay.
We're almost there. Tina says, playing games. No, she literally promised Carney no referendum this year. And yet. Troglodyte says, 51st state stuff is PSYOP.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know it. Like everybody in Alberta Independence absolutely knows at this point. That shit pops up, we're shutting it down right away.
Stuff. Troglodyte says, Ford might lose some weight if Alberta left. His buffet would shrink. The gravy train. And the gravy train, well, the funding for the funding for the gravy plane also might leave too. Tina says, yes, sorry, I meant that on his last interview with Jeffrey Rath, Braden told them he had a contact in the room where Smith and Carney had the MOU, and she said secretly promised Carney no referendum. Troglodyte says, we're all equal, allegedly. Used to be, apparently.
That's crazy if that's true. No vote if you give me a shitty MOU that federalizes Alberta natural resources eventually.
And increases the carbon tax for all past pipelines as well. Let's not forget about that one.
If she thinks she's going to actually sell that to Albertans, that's ridiculous.
Well, she's hoping they don't realize. Troglodyte says, I was asking myself what I should make for dinner. Apparently, I have to consult First Nations first. I think we still have some tortellini, so that's what I'm gonna eat. Daryl Robinson says, "Hi, Nat and Guy. Hit the like button, everyone." Thank you
and if
so
you're not
much. We always
subscribed,
keep forgetting to
we're
say that.
almost to 3,000 subscribers, and we keep forgetting to ask throughout the show.
Yes, so thank you so much. Charlotte says, "I declare independence from the First Nations." Tina says, "Thank you, Nat, for reading my comments." See, people are thankful to me.
Yes.
Dimebag says, "Nat and Guy, you hit it. I would want in the end to give everyone the same matching rights. That's exactly what I was thinking too."
Yeah. And that's something nobody brings up. They're always talking about we need to take away native rights. Well, no, there's another option, and that's bring everybody's rights up to the exact same level.
Charlotte says, "It's neighbor with a U, O-U." And Sean says, "What's that? I know neighbor." There is a change there in how you pronounce it. Whatever. I'm not getting into it. Dimebag says, "Screw you, Mr. Chief. You have one vote like the rest of us." Dimebag says, "It's like Shari law." That's how I have to say it. Otherwise, YouTube gets angry. Charlotte says, "It's English before the Yanks messed with it." Technically, and don't get mad at me for this, both Canadians and any Brits watching us, although it's late over there. Technically, the English that Americans speak currently, the way they write things and pronounce things, is actually closer to Old English than the English currently being spoken in the UK.
Okay, let's continue on here, Nat.
Dimebag says, "We have to pay our part for the national debt before Canada sets new records." Sean says,
in order to separate in an expedient fashion, we're going to have to make some compromises when it comes to different things with the federal government. We don't want it to take forever. We want it done in 6 months after the vote.
Sean says, "Color because Alberta is adopting Yankee spelling conventions." Chocolate says, "Conservative Dallas Brody, these clowns are posers." Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Absolutely.
Especially after they ousted her and then adopted all the same policies that she was advocating for that they called racist. Dimebag says, "True Albertans will do whatever they like." Dimebag also says, "I acknowledge land. It's under my feet. I've checked and it's there and I acknowledge it. And if you paid for your house, it's yours. And you shouldn't be having to pay property taxes either."
Yeah.
Dal Robinson says, "Forever Group had a rally and it was run by activists leading in singing 'Oh Canada' and screaming slogans. It really looks like an Antifa action." They always merge and intersect and cross. Hold on. Smile to Life Every Day says, "Get her done, Alberta." And Sean says, "Nat, thank you." You're welcome. We got through them. See, I told you.
And that was the Rumble questions as well?
No. Because you said we were going to Are You and Billy, aren't we?
No. Okay.
Or should I get through the Are You and Billy ones?
No. Let's go over to RU and BLE just to do one story, and then we'll get through all the questions that are over there.
Comments. Yes.
Comments.
So there's a 30-second wait screen while you go over to Are You and BLE. Before, don't forget to subscribe. It really does help us out. Also, hit that like button because it also helps the stream reach more people. Thank you so much for everybody that shared your comments and thoughts with us. Again, the show isn't over. You can find our username down there. See you there. 30-second wait screen.
Audio.
Let's get ready to